I've made tens of thousands of dollars at the age of 17 as an online coach. And in this video, I'm going to take you through the multiple step process I used to set a foundation inside of my business to allow me to do that for myself and all of my clients that I now serve. Because I spent years in this space and now I'm teaching it to other people, and I'm going to give you the entire system for free. And one very important note is each step within this three-part school sales system has been designed and set up to work with each other. And as I explain each step, you want to make a conscious effort to internalize each step, as well as think about how one step connects to the next. I will briefly explain it, but you'll start to notice some patterns and you'll start to notice connections if you're really thorough about the way you're thinking about these things. So make sure to pay attention and understand these concepts to their fullest. Now, that's only going to be able to happen, of course, through consistent implementation, but there's a difference between sitting here on this call, mindlessly listening because you're doing this on a Sunday afternoon or whatever it is for you because you don't have anything else to do, or actually taking notes, being thoughtful with your time, so that way going into the future, you're going to be able to implement this much more. And honestly, the easiest way to do this is I would recommend right now, grab a pen or a paper or like a Google Doc, somewhere where you can write down each step. And then under it, put bullet points with the most important facts that you learn. And then you can start making mental connections between these things, or maybe even writing it down like, oh, hey, I see that this affects this thing. And you'll really start to notice it as I get into the other parts about how one thing sets up for the next. And then once you can understand that in entrepreneurship, it's not just with this, but everything connects to each other. It's not, okay, if you're good at sales, that means you're automatically going to have, $1 million business. It helps, but you need a multitude of skills that are consistently growing to be able to effectively grow your business. And it all starts with your initiative and your action. So getting into step one, this is just the basics of branding. So what you have to understand is that online branding is fundamentally just the promotion of something, which creates an association between that thing and the company or influential figure. So that's the actual actions in itself. And based on that definition above, the only way to create a strong brand is to create a strong association between you and something else. And you'll see how powerful this is in a second. But what you need to understand is fundamentally branding is really powerful because of three major continuums. And notice how I say continuums. It's not just like you either have this or you don't. It's to what degree do you have this, as well as to what degree do you understand how to leverage this. So first, number one is reach. So how many people are you actually reaching? For example, Mr. Beast has a lot of reach, but he's just like an entertainment creator. Like, who's going to buy, like a $10,000 product, a random $10,000 product off of Mr. Beast, especially if it has nothing to do with any of his skills? Probably not much. So with that being said, now you have to understand somebody maybe like Donald Trump has impact, and so how deeply you impact these people. Now, this can be positive and this can be negative, but you do have to admit he has a lot of reach and he has a lot of impact with these people. So with that being said, now we have to think about somebody who has a lot of reach, a lot of impact, and they positively impact these people, so they have a positive connection. Well, if you think about Alex Hormozi, he has a lot of reach to a lot of people. He's deeply connected with them. And with most of these, there are a lot of positive associations. So understanding these three continuums are going to be huge going to the future, because your long-term goal in your business is to have a lot of reach. And this reach is very impactful and positive, because when you can do that, that's fundamentally what goodwill is. And it's going to compound so much more than your money will. So if you focus on this rather than just thinking about how can I make the most money now, this is actually what's going to make you more money in the future. For example, like I have a client who's a sleep coach for entrepreneurs, and before he was struggling to book any calls with like him at all, pretty much. Right before we started working together, he only had 5 calls booked within an entire month. Now, over time, as he's been improving his branding, he's now booking like literally over 100 calls a month. We actually track it like in our program, and every single day he's talking about he's booked 3, 4, 5 calls within the day, and he's having entrepreneurs who are making like $5,000 a month or more, literally reaching out to him and asking him for help and improving their sleep on school. In fact, he actually just started a school community. Some of you guys might know him. And within the first day, he got like 55 members. And that's because of the fact he grew his brand. It was positive and he had impact. and all because there was a clear association between himself and the sleep optimization. And kind of where I learned all of this is I was listening to like a video an entrepreneur made, or I guess he was an entrepreneur and a YouTuber. It was about discipline. This was late at night during the summer or around after my sophomore year, while I was actually just working a job at a drive-in movie theater. And then from there, I kind of hear mentioned a paid program he has. So I scroll down to this description and I click on this website and I go through his funnel. And now I'm kind of debating whether I should join or not because it costs my entire savings account. Well, then a week later, what I ended up deciding is I decided I'd buy from him. And this is meaning for the first time, I'd made a large purchase for my business. And then fast forward to the present day, I started to analyze, well, why did I buy from this guy? And the reason why this is so hard to analyze because you need to understand why you put your money in certain places. And you need to understand fundamentally what is money right now for you. And well, the reason is I watched multiple videos of this guy every week for the past year and a half prior to buying from him. And they were all based around like self-improvement, business, that sort of thing. So I watched this guy's content for years, almost felt as if I had built like a true connection to him. And he had a fantastic offer that resonated with me. And therefore I had spent $500 so I could learn from him. And now, not directly because of that, but over time I've learned more things. And now I have nearly $16,000 saved up and I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on my business, all from going from this point of like investing to one thing because of the principles now that I've now learned, implemented, and I'm teaching you. So it's really crucial for you to understand why you make these decisions, because then you're going to be able to replicate that in your business and get other people to make these decisions. But if you never start thinking about these things, then it's not going to help at all. Now, when it comes to actually effectively implementing the branding, it really just comes down to three key principles. First is your niche and your understanding, right? The understanding of your niche and the research you've done inside of it. And that's going to come from having a lot of niche specificity. But what I really mean by this is that within your niche, you have who you help, you have what you help them with, and then you have how you help them. And you want to be specific on, I would say pretty specific on most of these pillars. Now, with that being said, again, it's not one right thing or another. So don't think this is how specific I need to be. This is, again, a continuum from generality to specificity. And the more specific you are, typically the better after you've done a lot of research within these markets. And this market research is just going to be through the form of like posts and Google like forums you can send to people that you know within the niche, and DMs and calls. And then what you want to do is translate these specific pain points in school posts, because you're going to translate the specific pain points and you're going to translate the things you learn about this niche onto your school posts, onto your content. And I'll explain a lot more about this when it comes to like the flywheel components in step 3. But overall, you have to understand to effectively create a strong brand, you need to be able to actually resonate with these people. And that's where it's going to come into step 2. You're going to need to have messaging resonation. So when you translate the specific pain points that you learn from the market research in your specific niche, then what you need to do is make sure the way you say this, which is your messaging, actually resonates with these people. And what I mean by that is, first, within resonation, there's relatability. Well, relatability is when you feel that connection, like, wow, this guy really understands me. And that's going to be through like storytelling, telling stories about your experience and others that you've helped that are almost exactly like where somebody else is right now. Next is through value. Well, you've probably heard the term value thrown across everywhere. And value really just comes down to alleviating pain through solving problems. Because every problem you have is just an obstacle to an expectation that you have of yourself, therefore a goal you have. And then there's going to be a perceived pain associated with this problem. And this pain is usually like a mental or emotional discomfort. So when you can solve a problem for somebody, even if it's just a small problem, what you can do is alleviate some pain from their life. Therefore, they feel a stronger sense of resonation and connection to you. And then from there is authority. So this really comes down to how you position yourself, because you need to be seen as somebody who is, an authority figure, credible authority figure in your niche. What do I mean by this? We have to understand the word credibility fundamentally. Well, if you look at the root word credit, think about credit from a bank, like they loan you out something. Well, this is the same thing people are doing for you. They're loaning their trust to you. And that's where credibility comes in. They loan their trust to you when they can understand that you're an authority figure. And that's going to come from you positioning yourself as one simply just by telling the truth of like, hey, here's where I'm at. This is what I've done for other people. And then getting into the value, showing them, hey, you can do the same through X, Y, and Z. And I've even been in the situation you're in right now. That's relatability. And then from there, a lot of entrepreneurs, especially like when you're beginning, don't understand. You just need more frequency and more consistency. Well, what I mean by this is frequency is just the rate at which something occurs or is repeated over a particular period of time, or like within a given sample. In simple words, what that really means is doing more now, doing more in the short term. So to a higher degree, higher frequency. You hear about high frequency people and low frequency people. Well, the higher frequency people are moving more. They're taking more action. They're doing more things within the day. Now, consistency is the next aspect. This is the quality, always behaving or performing in a similar way, or of always happening in a similar way. Now, simply what that really means is just doing the same boring thing over and over and over and over again for a very long period of time. And that same boring thing if you do it enough. So if you're doing this enough to a high enough frequency throughout the time, and then you do that consistently enough, that's going to be the biggest determining factor in you getting results and strengthening your brand more than anything else I'm telling you. Because I can give you all these strategies and tips and whatever. It doesn't matter if you don't do the work. And I don't mean just like kind of do the work some days, like, oh, hey, I got this 10-hour day this one day, but the rest of the week I didn't work at all. Again, it's about that consistency. Just work. I mean, even if you were to work like 6 to 8 hours a day for like 6 months, you've already beat like 90% of these online entrepreneurs who haven't actually made any money. So understand it is so easy to beat your competition just by doing what's necessary. And now if you do that to a high frequency, that's even better. So that's fundamentally the basics of branding and what you need to understand when it comes to that. Now what we're going to do is talk about social profile setup and optimization. And remember, keep the mental notes of understanding how does my brand affect my social profiles and me optimizing these. And then how does it affect how other people perceive it? And just start trying to make these mental connections, because when you can, you're going to have a better understanding of this. Therefore, going into the future, you're going to be able to apply these concepts much better. So with that being said, you have to first understand, like, what does social profile setup even really mean? And like, why is it so important? Well, there's many aspects of social profile setup and optimization. Some are more direct and some are more indirect. For example, if I go here, some like a direct impact is synergy between platforms. You need to have a synergistic aspect to every one of your platforms so they actually complement each other and they work with each other rather than against. But something that's maybe a little bit more indirect is what you say and how you say it inside of your content, and how that reflects over to how people perceive your profile when they see it in the future. And then I'll get into each one of these and how that works. But first I need to actually get into like the definition of what does social profile setup mean. And like in this, I'll basically just go over step by step how to set them up and how in the way that it got like people reaching out to my clients and asking for their specific field of expertise. For example, this guy like got 3,000 subscribers just in a few months, and he had like just leads pumping in constantly into his business. Then I got another dude who actually he was saying, he's like, got another dude who wants to pay me already. And it was from him reaching out to him saying, hey, I want to pay you, like literally saying that. And then this other guy said, people reaching out to me now directly for calls. Like literally somebody reached out to him asking if he could get on a call with the guy. Imagine if you had people reaching out to you asking if they could get on a call with you. And then that happened almost every day. How powerful would that be for your business? Well, by implementing these things, that's what you can get. So overall, I've already pretty much just explained it. The importance of that is like really setting up your social profiles to getting your ideal clients, attracting them, and getting them to reach out to you. And then making sure your content is actually complementary to your social profile. So people build a constant image of your brand. And this constant, consistent image, this consistency comes from seeing you in multiple platforms and seeing you over a long enough period of time. And what I mean by constant is it's always the same thing. It's just the same thing again and again and again. Now, number 3 is just allowing you to compound goodwill in the long term. And then that'll exponentially increase your income without you having to put in more work. So instead, it's not like, okay, I'm doing 1,000 cold DMs, and from every 1,000 cold DMs I do, that means I book 10 sales calls. That's not how it's going to work. Instead, it'll be like you release 5 videos now, you might book 1 sales call. You release 5 videos in the future, or you make 5 posts on school or whatever, and then you book 50 sales calls. Something to that degree. And the reason why this is I'll get deeply into it later. With that being said, the base reason is simply because you started to improve your brand and therefore grow positive impact within your audience. And I really realized this power when I first joined school about 1.5 years ago in July of 2023. And I had seen a few people in many different school communities consistently post about the same topic. And then from there, I just started seeing their profile on school, YouTube, and Instagram. And then from that point on, I was like, okay, I'm seeing their profiles and I've listened to their videos on their posts and I've done all these other things. And then I just started seeing them and thinking about these topics and now remember branding and how this connects. Then after a few months, one of these guys actually had reached out to me and I ended up buying from him. And it was all because how they were able to set up their social profiles directly, as well as how they were able to develop at least a somewhat effective reputation or brand, indirectly influencing how people see them because they were making more content and they were doing things which align with how they wanted people to view them. And then they did this consistently enough to the point where people were going to buy from them super easily. And it's honestly astonishing what you can do. Like when I was on a sales call with the guy who I closed for 15,000, he had like one objection, was like, yeah, I'm talking to a couple other guys that do want to think about it. But then I handled that pretty simply. And I think it was literally just a smokescreen. What I mean by that is that he was just saying that because he was a little hesitant at the start. But then right after I, said the next thing I was saying, he was like, sure, yeah, I'll do it. And that call literally took me like 30 minutes. Imagine spending 30 minutes and getting a guy to commit to paying you 15 grand. So like that's pretty powerful. So if you can get that to set up for your business and consistently, it's going to take what you're doing right now to really the next level. Now getting into the strategy of all this, like how do you actually, implement this into your business? Well, there's 4 key aspects when it comes to how, setting up your social profile not only directly impacts how people view it, like when they see your social profile, but also indirectly, like they'll watch your content and then that impacts, when they see your profile a couple months down the line and then buying from you. Starting with synergy between platforms. So you need your Instagram, YouTube, and school profiles. They need to work together seamlessly to create a cohesive brand. Well, what does that really mean and how does that directly impact your social profile optimization? Well, first is like just consistency in messaging. So when your messaging aligns across platforms, it establishes credibility and trust. Well, what do I mean by this? Again, remember the credibility thing, how people are loaning their trust out to you. So for example, like your Instagram post might tease like a long form educational content, so then you send them over to your YouTube channel and then they watch your video and then you frame your school as like an exclusive community to help them further their transformation in your specific niche. Well, when you do that, then they join your school community. Now you got them on Instagram, now you got them on YouTube, and you got them on school. And then setting this up, imagine they start joining other school communities, and then they see your content further. It's like they can't escape you. And then the more you start living in their head, the easier it'll be to sell to them in the future. Now, this requires, and a lot of this will require being able to have a little bit longer term thinking about the second or third order consequences of your action, rather than just asking yourself, how can I make more money right now? Like, yeah, sending 500 cold DMs is good and it'll probably make you money maybe a little shorter term, but not nearly as much as if you start implementing these and actually prioritizing these things on school. So next is like cross promotion, as I was mentioning, is just connecting these different things. And then authority building. So it's like maybe on YouTube, you establish authority through genuine high value content that resonates with your audience. And then implementing this is really simple, as all you have to do is just have all your niche statements on your social profiles. And remember, your niche is just who, what, and how. It's overall the way you position yourself in the marketplace. For example, imagine you're in a room and then there's a wall and a door. It's going to look different if you're at one point looking at the window and maybe somebody's looking through the window at you, versus if you're doing a handstand looking at the door and somebody's looking through the doorway at you. And the reason I bring that up, because it's the exact same thing online. How you position yourself, what you say, what you look like, and what you do is going to directly impact people's perception of you. So next is how to make your profile stand out. So it's like having a clear profile picture, professional theme, and like a theme which actually matches with the audience likeness. What I mean by this is that people have a certain identity and they want to feel a certain way. They want to watch certain things based off of how they view themselves and how they view the world. So what you need to do is theme yourself and your page on school and your posts and your content at least somewhat around what they will best, like I was saying again, resonate with and what they will like the most. Now, of course, this is going to have to be just packaged this way. And then what you can do is once you get them to click, once you get them to click and read your post or watch your video, then what you do is implement your unique mechanism and start talking about the solutions that you found, furtherly positioning yourself as an authority figure. And then from there, again, this is more of like a 1% thing. It's like clear brand colors, because then when people see these colors, they start making that conscious association with you. For example, I actually was so this was in my paid program, and I was talking to one of my clients. He was like, dude, actually, I seen your post the other day. It was fantastic. And I immediately knew it was you because I seen that green ring around your profile. And then like that got me thinking. It was like, okay, well, if that's the case, I'm sure other people think just like that. So then when people are scrolling on YouTube, or even more especially on school and other school communities, they'll immediately recognize you. They'll see your profile and they're clicking immediately, therefore attracting these people further. And next thing is just use the language your ideal client would actually resonate with. So what I mean by this is you just have to think, how do they think and speak? Now, language isn't like, okay, are you going to speak in Spanish or Arabic or German or English? It's the way they say what they say. People have certain mannerisms. They speak in certain ways. They like certain analogies. When you can dig deeper into these people's brains and then translate that over to your content, it's going to be fantastic what you can achieve, especially when you do that consistently over a long enough period of time. For example, let's think about like your average gym bro. Maybe if he was going to watch anything about business, you would want that. He would probably want there to be analogies which were able to relate to something in the gym. So, for example, you could say, if you're talking about how he should look at business, you shouldn't just look at business as an easy one set of a bench press, but it's consistently working out, doing the same exercises and the same workouts, progressively overloading over 6 months, 12 months, 3 years. And the reason I give you that example is because then you can start thinking about your niche, who you want to help, and what analogies, what things will they resonate with. And remember, resonation is relatability, value, and authority. So now getting onto when you have this synergy, how does this affect how other people perceive you? Well, I already explained it, so I'll go over this briefly. But really what this comes down to is understand that your profiles directly impact people's impression of you. So for potential clients, when they see your profile, these are just acting as like a digital storefront, and they determine whether someone sees you as a credible coach or not. Well, how does this like directly impact your social profile, like optimization? Well, basically what it is like when you have these higher quality visuals or these clear bios and overall just branding content around a very specific issue, and then you do that consistently, this doesn't only give impression of you having authority within your niche and like the transformative offer that you have. It'll also align with the expectations that you do give your high ticket clients. But the best thing is that they already have those expectations going into the call. So it's like if they already expect you to be able to get them to $100,000 a month, within the next 6 months. I'm not saying that's true, but just hypothetically, then when they're on the sales call, they're going to be like 100 times more likely to buy from you because you already set that expectation before. That's why this is so powerful. Because if you're not doing this and you're just expecting the random John Doe that you DM on Instagram, then you follow up with 7 times and it was just a cold DM that you sent, you expect him to buy easier than one of these guys, well, maybe you might be a little delusional. So I hope nobody thinks that. But then again, then you're like, okay, there's so much to this content stuff. It's a lot of it's just about starting, and then you can slowly implement these different concepts. So you may be doing some of this now. So you need to make sure you really double down on doing these things, because all it does is helps you set yourself up for the future. Next is like social proof. So it's you can highlight your client results. You can build even more trust with people, just making it way easier to sell. So the next thing is like you need to be able to say things that attract your ideal client at their current progress level. And this can indirectly impact like you optimizing your social profiles and then being more optimized to attract high ticket clients. Because basically when you can talk to somebody's specific struggles and the desires of their ideal current progress level, it's like ideally like where you want your client to be, there's going to be a certain person who that is. So you're going to want to attract that person, not somebody who's lower than that. If you're going to be helping a certain type of business, so if you're going to be helping, like saying a certain type of business with ads, for example, you're not going to want to talk about let's say, like imagine you're helping e-commerce stores with advertising and like building creatives, even organic creatives or paid ads. You're not going to want to talk to somebody who is just trying to figure out what dropshipping even is. At least right now, you want to talk to their specific struggles and talking about the exact thing that they're struggling with when it comes to developing these advertising and these ads. And no, you're not giving too much value away. You should always give more and more and more, because that only improves the trust that somebody has in you. Because imagine, when you can articulate someone's problem better than they can, they will automatically assume you have the solution. That's probably because you do. Again, making it a lot easier to sell to them. Now, how does this actually indirectly impact your social profile? Well, when you have tailored content, this just makes your content more deeply resonate with your audience and feel more relevant. And then they'll have a higher perceived value of your overall profiles on all these platforms. And then this will signal to them that you understand their journey, where they're at, therefore more valuable. And then overall, you want to then have more of a progressive journey. This is a little bit of a higher up standpoint, but what I mean by this is like, okay, somebody first goes to your YouTube channel. You take this step. And for example, if you're consistently creating content, you're helping somebody go from like 1K a month, maybe to 10K or 5K a month. Then they join your school community to take the next step. And then basically you've given them so much help, they just automatically come for you for the next thing. And that's ideally the goal in the long term. And then implementing this really just comes down to asking yourself one major thing is who would be the easiest to get results for? The reason for this is because when you center your branding around only including and attracting your ideal clients, in the short term, you might see a little less progress. Like you tell me, oh, Dustin, I uploaded 17 videos, or, I have an audience of 5,000 subscribers. Why am I not converting them? Or I've posted in these school communities 100 times for the past month or two. Well, yes, it's partially in the short term you just haven't, but also another thing just could be because you're not really actually attracting and speaking to your ideal client. However, in the long term, when you set up these right things and you have the proper conversion system in place, you're not only going to strengthen your brand's reach, impact, and positivity, you'll also be able to be seen as more of an authority figure, therefore charge higher prices and get better results for clients. So overall, now what you need to understand is okay, you understand the social profile setup. You have these different social profiles that need to align with who you want to target, have the same niche everywhere. Don't have one saying you're a business coach, and then another saying you're a fitness coach, and another one saying you're a dietitian, and another one saying you're a dentist. You need them all to have synergy. So with that being said, now that you understand that, how does what you say and how you say it in your content reflect onto how people perceive your profile? Because it does, and the way it does, you might find it, although it's an indirect impact, trust me, it's going to change things and you might not even realize it right now. So it's overall the tone and messaging in your content will shape your audience's perception of your expertise and the results that you can deliver. Then as they see your social profile, they start to create a specific perception of you, which is then associated to you, right? So they develop a specific perception, so a certain way they view your content, and then they see your profiles in other places. For example, they see 12 of your school posts. Well, what if they seen you on Instagram? Or what if they just seen you in another community and decided to check out your profile? They're 100 times more likely to join a school community you have or watch something else from you than if they had no idea that you could help them. So you need to create that positive perception. And this impacts, this really does impact you a ton through first is just relatability and authority. And notice how I've mentioned these a couple of times because of how powerful they are. When you can genuinely, somebody genuinely feels like they can relate to you and you actually are in a position of authority, then you can balance this relatability. So showing you understand their struggles with having the authority that you also have their solution. So not only do you understand them, but you also understand how to get them out of their situation. And it builds trust without being overly salesy that you guys might feel like you are. So then from there, you need to have consistency in your brand voice. Well, this isn't just your voice and how you sound, but this is like the language, the energy and messaging across Instagram, YouTube, and school. All of this needs to be aligned. For instance, if you are always focusing on the results, like on YouTube, but then, and this is on your very specific issue, but then way overly casual on Instagram, talking about one day you're just posting a video with you and your girlfriend, the next day you're recording what your parents just made for dinner. It's it just creates this disconnect. And some of you guys might have that right now. You might have your Instagram here, and then maybe on your school posts you talk about content, but then in your bio you say you help you help agencies grow through AI infrastructures, but then on your other content, like your other content in other school communities, you talk about how to lose weight. It doesn't create a consistent feeling and perception of you. And then overall, this will subconsciously influence people when you create this consistency and have this authority, even without explicitly pitching people. Your audience subconsciously associates your profiles with the level of transformation that they can expect from you. So if they can expect a higher level of transformation, you're going to be able to make it so that way the sale is way easier, because when they expect that higher level of transformation, they're like, oh, well, if this guy's obviously going to get me here, then I might as well just buy this thing because I already know that's the case. So every post indirectly markets your brand, and it also changes your brand in either a good or bad way. So now to be able to really implement this, just understand again, you need to have consistency in messaging within your content as well as consistent and frequent posting, because this sets clear expectations, it creates connections between you and the viewer or the reader, and therefore it strengthens your brand, remember, and the reach, impacts, and positivity. So in your school posts, and even maybe on other platforms, I would always keep in mind to remove rather than add. You might think you need to spend, an hour creating a 60-page essay on some crazy value post that nobody even probably reads any of it anyways. You don't. Just think about, how can I say less than necessary, and ask yourself, how can I explain this in less words and make it simpler to understand? So now you fundamentally understand every single reason of why you are not, we can say, at least getting attraction in getting people to actually view you in the way you want them to through your social profile setup and optimization. So now that we've laid that foundation and you understand how to build an effective brand and you understand how to translate that over to your social profile setup and optimizing it in the future, we can finally get into the flywheel components. So there's one section at the end of here, which is actually the positioning strategy you can use, which is a precursor to these flywheel components. As I'll be going over each social media platform's purpose and the basis of how each of them works within the flywheel, therefore, you can then have a fundamental understanding of how to leverage these things when acquiring clients on Skool, and then when being able to just do this in a more effective way in the future. Because right now, maybe you're just posting on Instagram or in other Skool communities or even on YouTube. Maybe you're already doing some of this, and maybe you understand some of this, but you don't understand what's the actual purpose of these things for you right now, and how can you use them as effectively as possible. And then how can we create as much leverage as possible in your current situation? Well, that's exactly what I want to help you do. So first is YouTube. So your YouTube is kind of like an authority attraction hub. What I mean by this is you should be creating in-depth videos targeting your audience's like key struggles. For example, like how to book 50 sales calls in 90 days. Or maybe you are a coach that, helps entrepreneurs with sleep. So you make a video called How I Fall Asleep in Less Than 10 Minutes Every Single Night, something like that. Or maybe how I get all my work done in 10 hours or something like that. Or like how I make 10K a month while sleeping 8 to 10 hours a night. You sell to that idea. You sell to where they want to be and the struggles that they're having right now. And the next thing is like Instagram is almost like a micro nurturing engagement platform. What I mean by this is you have like these micro nurturing situations where you have your stories, you have your reels, and you can even direct traffic to YouTube or to your Skool community. Overall, you use it as a nurturing hub, therefore warming people up. Because, okay, well, what does that even mean? Well, when you warm up your hands, you're creating friction between your hands. That's what you want to do with your leads. Because when you can create friction between you and your leads, then it warms them up. And the warmer the lead is, the more ready they are to buy. So on here, you can just like showcase testimonies and this other stuff, and I'll get into exactly what to do in the next step. So from there, Skool. So Skool is going to be used as like an exclusive community conversion mechanism. You really want to use Skool to not only attract new leads, but effectively convert them, as it helps a ton. Personally, like I've had 2 of my own communities and then 2 high ticket masterminds on there, as well as before that, I sold people into one-on-one high ticket coaching. And then I've also helped like 20, 30 other people do a similar thing. So I found it works really fucking well. So with that being said, you want to use it as like the kind of the ultimate destination for their transformation. Now it's not actually like you are going to sell them after they get into your Skool community. Yes. With that being said, is like if you can funnel people into your Skool community from your Skool posts and networking with them in DMs and even on other platforms, it's like, hey, here's the next step you need to take. This is going to incentivize more people to do so. You don't just have a Skool community to have it. You have it to be shown as the clear next step. So that way they actually have a reason. So it's not like, oh, I can just keep watching you on YouTube. Or like, I don't really need it. Well, I could join your Skool community. But I mean, I've just been finding your posts so helpful, and we're already talking DMs, so why do I have to? You might have even gotten that before, and if not, you probably will in the future unless you position it this way. So finally, we've finished the optimization of your profiles and understanding how to position each one of these places. So now we can get into actually developing your flywheel and what that even means in the future. So we're going to go over what the base level flywheel is, because there's actually a higher level flywheel that a lot of like guys like Alex Hormozi or Russell Brunson or Charlie Morgan that they're using right now that is different from what you're using. So if you might try to like copy them, well, thing is you try to do that, but you don't make the same progress because they did something different in the past. So what I'm going to do is first go over the base level flywheel, its importance, the strategy behind it, as well as how to implement it. And then I'll briefly go over what these entrepreneurs are doing in our space that you can learn from. With that being said, before I do go on, does anybody have any questions about anything I've said so far? Like anything at all? Please feel free to ask because I can answer any question you might have.
Yo, Dustin, I got a question here.
Go for it.
Yeah, so do you know if this concept also applies not just for coaching, but for like other business models as well, like e-com or agency, let's just say?
Oh yeah, 100% it could. Now I've just focused this on coaching because this is what I've done majorly in the past. With that being said, I have had some experience in agencies. So basically it's going to be fundamentally the same thing because you have to understand why does anybody buy anything? Well, they want to have a certain sort of transformation. So what I mean by this is that somebody wants to get from point A to point B. So the most simple example of this is, for example, buying gas. When you buy gas, you're trying to do this so that you can drive your car somewhere. Now, that's why people buy anything. That's why they're going to buy a T-shirt from your e-com store, or they're going to buy, your whatever your service you sell in your agency, because they want to get to some sort of end result. So, for example, think about like organic TikTokers or people with Instagrams or even on YouTube who, especially I've noticed on Instagram and TikTok, there's going to be these drop shippers that they have these accounts and they're making this organic content. And sometimes it's even like stupid content that just follows the trends. But what this does is it improves their reach. And then in the future, allowing them to improve, the sales they have simply because of the fact that they grew this brand. For example, I can tell you actually one key thing that one really good example I seen on Instagram. It was some 14-year-old kid. He spent, I don't know how long. He probably spent I think it was like a 90-day or 100-day series on Instagram of Reels. Some of you guys might have seen this before. And it was some kid who he was saying like day 17 of becoming a millionaire at 14. And he would have like stupid videos of him like running with a stick, doing push-ups in the woods and that sort of thing. But then what he did was really smart. He stopped a lot of that content. He now has 500,000 or 200,000 followers on Instagram, and he has a content marketing agency. And then now he's like showing proof that he's making like 8, 10K, 15K, 20K. I don't know 100% if that's really, really real, but he's definitely making some money. And now he's been able to divert the traffic and have this proof and have this brand. And then as he was making that content, people were reaching out to him, asking him for help. And because I checked out his profile, and then I seen that he actually had another account. I was like, what is this? And then it was like, it's his agency. And it has like 10,000 followers, but he was only posted like 2 or 3 times because they came from his original account while he was making those videos. So overall, it really can apply to there. You just have to fundamentally understand what problems are you actually solving with your product or service. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm just thinking about like the whole reach and impact thing that you talked about earlier. Because I know like some people, what they do is like they buy Instagram accounts with followers already in their niche. Do you think that would work? Because technically you would have the reach already, right? You have the people that's following you, but then they might not be your ideal people. Do you think like you could convert them into people that might buy from you?
So I would say you can. Yes, you can. Like if I had an audience of 500,000 people that never knew me, but they were relatively in my audience, in my niche, yeah, I'd be able to convert a decent amount of them. But let's look at the difference between them never knowing you until that point or them knowing you throughout the entire time. Let's say it took you, 5 years to grow an Instagram account to 500,000 followers or something like that. I think that if you're looking to buy another account, it may just be the easier way out in the short term, but it won't automatically lead to your long-term success. Because if that was truly the thing that would work almost even nearly as well, Hermosi probably would have just done the same thing. He even said he was against making content for years beforehand. And like he already had gotten to the point where I think he sold Gym Launch, or he was about to sell Gym Launch when he first started making content on YouTube like 6 years ago ish, or 4 years ago. I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. So overall, yes, you can convert them, but more that would be more of like a short-term play to get some cash to reinvest back into your business rather than like a long-term play. Because then, okay, let's say you start posting content, you start doing this, well, then you're just building an audience anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Do you have any like follow-up questions on that?
No, that was it. I was just wondering like how the reach worked and everything.
Yeah, no problem. And does anybody else have any questions? Really about anything I've gone over so far. If not, I'll get into the flywheel components. All right, cool. So now I'm going to get into the components of like the basic components of your flywheel. And that's so you can actually understand how to develop an effective flywheel, what that really is, and the strategy behind it. So starting with the importance. So this near obsession with actually creating these effective flywheels and being able to replicate them all started when I started to analyze every single month in my business so far where I got an influx of traffic. So for example, in October of 2023, I signed like 3 high ticket deals within about a 48-hour period. Or like in June of 2024, so about 6 months ago, I signed $37,000 in deals just that month. Or even in like September, a couple months ago, I started with a new offer. I launched it and immediately got $18,000 in deals on that new offer. And I figured out there's a few commonalities. One, doing more. Number 2, doing more of the right things. And then number 3 is doing more of the right things consistently before the time I had actually made the money. So it's like the example we were just talking about there is, yeah, you could go buy somebody else's account with people relatively in your niche, but you're going to start making more content and you're going to start doing these things to eventually be able to compound this goodwill and build a genuine connection with you. So you didn't do anything beforehand, which means, yeah, you can make some money, but it's going to be much, much harder, especially if it's centered around you, your brand, and your image. So this is important to truly internalize because a flywheel is created only when you have consistent and frequent action, the right actions, which are really optimizing your messaging, content, and digital location. What that means is the platform or the place you're on, and then having enough time for this to compound. So for example, that's why I was mentioning is like, yeah, it could work for like ecom, maybe if they're, for example, on TikTok, and let's say, you start this TikTok account and you're selling like, I don't know, men's deodorants, you're drop shipping it or something like that. Or like, let's say something as simple like a bamboo pillow. Well, then what you're going to start to do is make this organic content that's centered around that before you even ask anybody to buy anything. And then, now you have a following of 50,000 people on Instagram and maybe 500,000 people on TikTok. And then what you do is you start promoting this product of like saying, oh, this is so good. I found X, Y, and Z, whatever. And then, if you do that like once or even like twice a month for 3 months, and then each one of these times you get overall, let's say for 3 months, you do that a couple times and overall you get about 10 to 15 million views. Let's say even like 0.5% of them converts to buying your product. You're still looking at, well, 15 million, 1% of that is about 150,000. 0.5% is 75,000. So in 3 months, you just made 75,000 times whatever your product costs. Let's say it costs like even if it was just $10, you're still making like almost $1 million. So just understand it like that. And then when you start thinking like this, you can really apply this to any scenario, and it especially works really well with educational products because there's so many more ways to monetize education simply due to the fact that when it comes to education itself, you're changing your behavior. Therefore, you're getting a real world result. And when you do that, you're able to charge more. But the thing is, it does have a little bit of a smaller reach, but you're still able to charge way more and make monumental differences to the amount of money you can make per viewer and per regular viewer than if you were to have some more educational thing. So with that being said, those 3 things are really just the consistent frequent action, the right action, and enough time for this to compound. Therefore, I realized like in a few different situations, I'd created an effective flywheel, all because I noticed these common patterns. From there, I helped others like implement the same thing. Like I actually have a client named Tyler Alberton. Maybe some of you guys know him. He used this model to close 3 deals in the first 2 weeks, just the first 2 weeks of selling his coaching program, because we took the initiative to lay the proper groundwork to help him easily succeed. Overall, you need to understand it simply works. So there's no reason why you can't do the same thing, of course, with these prerequisites in mind. So now getting to the actual strategy. Well, here's the basis of how you will create your flywheel. You got school, YouTube, and Instagram, and you got the primary acquisition platform of school. You have a primary authority builder, which is YouTube, and then you have a primary nurturing platform, which is Instagram. And on school, this is where you can like generating leads through networking and branding. When you centralize, this is where you want to centralize onto like a school community, all of your leads too. And this is where you can easily convert your leads onto sales calls. And then on YouTube, this is where you can, yes, generate leads through branding. At the start, it shouldn't be your primary focus, but because as I mentioned, this takes time to compound. And then this is where you can build authority to position yourself effectively. And again, it'll take time to compound. And honestly, a lot of entrepreneurs, their first like even 10, 20 grand that they make, a lot of that's just through networking and getting to know people. And these people are like, hey, I noticed you're pretty good at this. Can I buy something from you? Can I pay you to do this for me? They're like, sure. In fact, I know a company that's local around me that they make $5 million a year, and they are completely based from referrals. Like they don't even have a client acquisition system. It's just referrals and networking and doing all of that. So next is your primary nurturing platform. This is like through Instagram. You can generate leads through like networking or people seeing your content and that sort of thing. But again, it's not the primary focus. This is majorly where you want to like nurture your leads, or even some of your clients. If they see your content, they're going to automatically get more value from it and feel that stronger connection. And this is where you can also convert your leads onto calls or into your school community. It's not going to be the primary focus, but it helps a ton. For example, if somebody is checking out your school posts, maybe they don't join your school community or reach out to you right away. They check out your Instagram, and then they see you posted a story that said, hey, just DM me the word whatever, and I can help you with that. Then they DM you. And then you message them, get talking with them, and then you book a call or you have them join your free community. That's another way you can effectively utilize that platform. And then now you just need daily actions to effectively utilize each platform. So this allows us to create the basis of your flywheel, starting with school. So this would be posting and commenting. And I'll get into the posting and commenting strategy, which will be shared in part 2. And then YouTube, this will just be long form content creation. So this, of course, depends on your progress level, but generally long form, in-depth, concise content, solving specific problems will work the best for you right now, based off of the purposes that we mentioned before. Next is Instagram. So this will be reels and stories. So this will be your reels that you post and stories, and I would do daily reels and weekly stories. And these stories are simply going to be of your results and what you're working on, and then your client results, and then a call to action to your free community and or YouTube video. So with that being said, next, we actually need to get into the base level flywheel implementation. So how do we actually implement this? Well, you can effectively implement it by, first is just invest more time. Having the necessary systems is great, but it doesn't matter if you don't invest more time and take effort and do the effort that's required to succeed. Like take what you assume is required and then multiply that by at least 10, and not only within the day, but also the length of time. So you're like, oh, if I just work like a couple months, and genuinely be real with yourself. Like look at what have you done in the past, because that's fundamentally what you believe. What you do is what you believe, even if you tell yourself something different. Take like what you did in the past 3 months or so, and then how much you worked, and then think about, no, that's going to take me 3 years, and I'm going to have to work 10 times longer and harder within every single one of these days. Overall, taking accountability, and not only getting accountability from yourself, but getting accountability from somebody else is always pretty much the solution to this problem, especially when there's consistency. Next is define your ideal client. Remember, just ask yourself who would be the easiest to get results for. From there, to effectively implement, the flywheel strategy, you're going to have to create a no-brainer offer, because you want to work from the ground up. So you start off with your offer, and then you can translate that over to your content strategy. So create a no-brainer offer based on your ideal client's desired progress level. Understand exactly where your ideal clients want to be, and then from there, reverse engineer to where they are now. and what steps they'll have to take in order to get their desired progress level. And then always just talk to their desired progress level in your content and in your posts, because this allows people to understand like, hey, this guy will be able to get me there. And then number 4 is just define your content and posting strategy. At the start, daily consistent action is always best for beginners. And honestly, even like when you're making 10, 20, 30K a month, if you just do stuff daily and make it better each time, then implement all these strategies to do that, you're going to make so much money. And even from implementing these strategies that I'm teaching you, my client, Zach, he actually made his first 2 $1,000 sales literally just selling his BJJ coaching offer in the first 2 days. So now, how do you actually know your flywheel is succeeding? Well, first is signing clients. It just becomes easier on sales calls. Like there's no more of these hard sales, or there's a lot less. Like right now, most of my sales calls take 30 to 45 minutes maximum. That's like max. I've had maybe one sales call take more than an hour in the past like month or two. And most of that comes down to like the objection handling. Like by the time you get on that sales call, you should know your client or your potential client. You should know where they're at, what they want, and those sorts of things. And they should at least be really interested in what you have to offer. So you shouldn't be having to hard sell everybody, spend 2 hours to get them to pay you $20. So next thing is the consistent messages and comments. Like they're thanking you for your specific value and help. So I'm getting these almost daily at this point. You want to have these consistent comments and messages that are thanking you for the specific value and thanking you for the help, as well as asking you for more. And then consistent sales calls scheduled for inbound, which I'll cover that process in part 3. Then as you notice, you'll probably notice substantial change within the first 2 to 3 months of starting. But within enough action, like that'll probably happen. However, the bulk of progress will come after 2 to 3 years. So I need you to think bigger and think longer. Not, 10K a month, 3 months, whatever. No, like $1 million a month, within the next few years. So what does it look like to take your flywheel to the next level? I alluded to that earlier and I was briefly mentioning it, but now I want to actually go into that just so you have a good picture of what to expect. Before getting into that, you need to have achieved the bare minimum, like the prerequisites to even consider taking your brand and flywheel to a higher level. First is dominated your ultra specific niche, minimum of 100K a month. Like people think, 100K a month is so much. It's not that much. Like $100,000 a month. Like if you sell something, let's say it's 10K, or let's say it's even 5K. That's 20 sales in a month. That's 20 new sales. If you have any payment plans, referral, affiliates, whatever you have, if you have those, or like upsells or whatever, like you might need 10 to 15 sales with a 4 to 5K product. Like it's not that hard. And the next is posted consistently and frequently for 2 years or more. And of course, targeting the niche that you're doing. And again, I'm just about to reach these prerequisites. Like I'm not even there yet. But it does have a profound impact on at least your mental clarity going into these things, that like you understand, hey, there's a next level and this is what I can do in multiple years in the future to be able to have that high level flywheel creation, but it's really not a necessity for years to come. So here are just some examples of some base level, like ultra specific flywheels that converted to successful high level flywheels. And again, this is really important to understand. So you actually have that, we can paint that picture of what a higher level flywheel looks like. So you can make client acquisition easier, more seamless, and you can understand like it's just even easier and easier as you go along. So first, for example, is Alex Hormozi. So before, this was honestly, I think he's privated some of his videos, but as you can see, is like number one mistake I'm seeing gyms make right now, and what I would do if I had my gyms, that sort of thing, right? And he even made some videos and podcasts like a couple years before then. For example, Russell Brunson, he actually was making content way before this, if you know his background. He was making books way before this. But with that being said, still 6 years ago, it's like number one way to make more money when selling online value ladder. ClickFunnels, what is it and makes it so different? Before, so he had like sales funnels with specific strategy. Now it's just general sales and marketing. Like he has, for example, Myron Golden's 4 closing techniques, or something like Trump versus Kamala based on their marketing alone, who should win? Like that sort of thing, right? It's just general. He's talking about that. Same thing with Charlie Morgan. Before he was agency appointment booking, this was like 3-4 years ago. He said the mental hack helped me with this, or another more specific one is how to visualize your way to this. He was like talking a little bit about mindset, but he was always talking to the goal of booking more appointments specifically for your agency. Or for example, the best platform in 2024. Now he changed that title, of course, that was 3 years ago, for SMMA appointment booking. Now, just general mindset content like I'm a millionaire, I'm still insecure, rip, like that sort of thing. Or for example, how to clean up your life like a millionaire. Now, some final thoughts about this is now it's what's just important to know is for each one of these influential figures, this is not a perfect representation of exactly how they developed. However, there are still some key factors that we can learn from. So like I'll briefly explain what the concept of this looks like. So you have a decent picture in 2 to 3 years. Also, so you can just start thinking like this yourself. First is specific to more general content. And then 2 is like 3 years ago minimum. Like they've done this for a long time and they did the other one for a long time. And they also made like millions before expanding. So this is really important to keep in mind because when you can identify these crucial trends in your market, you'll be able to stay ahead of it. And you'll be able to position yourself as an authority and make sales easily. So now, with that being said, I want to move on to part 2 of the school acquisition system so you can get more practical application on how to actually start bringing in these leads and acquiring clients from school.